Welcome to CSGuitars, the science of loud. This Glarry guitar costs just 77 quid, which is stupid cheap, and you can tell by looking at it who the intended audience is. This isn't for the jazz guys or your blues dads. This is for the young lady or gentleman who likes to wear black trench coats, corpse paint, and platform boots covered in spikes. What I mean is, you don't buy this guitar to soberly contemplate the clean channel detail on that middle single coil. You're going to play filthy, down-tuned metal on this, chugging away through an HM2 on that bridge pickup. What I want to know is, can Glarry do metal? There are myriad videos of this burning fire guitar on YouTube, but none of them go quite far enough. Nobody wants to hear you play John Mayer or Hendrix on this. We want to hear some Entombed or At the Gates. Now, a guitar as cheap as this, straight out the box, obviously isn't going to be set up to do just that, but it doesn't mean it's set up badly. I was pleasantly surprised to discover that the action was playable right out of the box, if still a little high for my liking. The intonation was pretty close to where it needed to be, and it played well with no work done whatsoever. I'll show you what I mean. Now that's all fine, but it isn't without its problems. I'd be lying if I said that this guitar was comfortable to play right now. It's in desperate need of a setup to get everything feeling its best, but I guarantee once that's done, it will play fantastically. You may also have noticed while listening to the guitar a pinging reverberation making the sounds messy. This is coming from the vibrato springs in the rear cavity, something I see with all of these cheap guitars, but fortunately there's a very easy fix. And of course, it's a set of 9s on here. That's perfectly normal for standard tuning, but we want to go lower and heavier. I'm going to be slapping on a thick-ass set of D'Addario strings and see where we get to. Now, the first issue I addressed was that spring cavity on the back. You'll have noticed in the sounds an annoying pinging from the springs which, under a lot of distortion and heavy percussive playing, were ringing out, reverberating and making the sound very messy. This is only going to get worse after we've added the heavy strings, so I cut a couple of foam blocks that slide between the springs and mute them. This should make our death metal sound much more precise. I also went around the entire instrument and ensured that all the screws were seated correctly, as there was something rattling away independent of the instrument, possibly one of the adjustment screws for the humbuckers, but that now seems to have stopped. A big part of choosing the sunburst finish as opposed to the solid colours this guitar is also offered in is to see the quality of the underlying wood. Solid colours are often used to hide cheap materials or mistakes, but with a transparent layer, there's nowhere to hide and the manufacturer will always choose the nicest bodies to receive this kind of paint job. So if you want the nicest materials, make sure you go for the transparent finishes. The wood used here, while very lightweight, is really lovely to look at. It's got a nice tight grain and very pleasing colour gradations. I can only see one join in the wood and it's kind of difficult to spot where it is, lining up directly under that lowest string. This might legitimately be a two-piece body, which is great for the price. These triangular wedge inlays are a bit more work to get right than simple dots, so it's really nice to see that they've made the effort here and it's done very cleanly. Really elevates the look of the instrument. This is a very basic fret job, but done to a high standard. All the frets are seated correctly and there are no sharp edges. The neck and fingerboard do feel like bare wood though. While they are smooth and have obviously been sanded to a very high grit, you can still feel the hair of the grain ever so slightly. If there is a finish on here, it's extremely thin and could possibly benefit from a couple of coats of wood finishing oil. For electronics, we have this HSH pickup configuration, which we love to see. This will afford us a lot of tonal variations, even if the metalheads using this will stick pretty much exclusively to the two humbuckers. A 5-way blade selector switch gives us access to all of the positions, but sadly no coil splitting in positions 2 and 4. These humbuckers are simple 2-conductor wiring, but if you were to upgrade them at some point, sky's the limits. If you want a more reserved body shape than this, and I'd understand if you did, but you want to keep all the same features, then take a look at the Model 170. That's Glarry's nod to an Ibanez RG style body plan. And if you are one of the aforementioned blues dads, there are plenty of Strat and Tele style guitars in a wide range of finishes. But that's enough reviewing. You want to see if this can do metal. Let's put it to the test. Okay, Bonamassa, away you go and watch literally any other guitar YouTube channel if you want to hear a guitar through a clean Fender amp, and let the 90s death metal fans talk for a second. B standard tuning, into HM2, into Marshall style crunch, pretty convincingly Swedish, and remember it was cheap equipment that was the soul of those early death metal albums, so this feels pretty fitting. All the sounds you've heard until now are through the Victory Kraken, with either the Apex 808 or HM2 out front, running into the Hoff9 cabinet through the tube amp expander and picked up by a pair of Lewitt microphones. Now you might be thinking, Colin, you ridiculously handsome, why the hell would you put a 77 quid guitar through thousands of pounds of studio gear? Well, because I can, and you absolutely would too if you had this stuff. I see your point though. What would this guitar sound like through an amplifier that a beginner might be able to afford? Well, why do you think I keep this Marshall MG Microstack around? 15 watts of solid state distortion and some basic 10-inch speakers. Let's see what it sounds like. I think it's safe to say that Glarry can indeed pull off metal. The pickups are probably the weakest part of the whole thing. Those humbuckers are reasonable, but they're not particularly high output or very nuanced in their sound. It's not a huge problem if you just crank the amp harder, and at 77 quid they do the job, but there's plenty of scope to upgrade these later. With modern manufacturing techniques, it's almost impossible to make a bad guitar, and even at 77 quid, where corners must have been cut to keep the cost this low, this is a viable instrument. Once it receives a setup, it's completely playable, performs well, and can even get you into metal territory. I had a lot of fun messing around with this one. If you have a lot more to spend, then you can absolutely get better feeling and better sounding instruments. But if you're on a very tight budget, or just want a super cheap project guitar, then Glarry has you covered with this Burning Fire. Links are in the description if you want to see the other options available, or even purchase one for yourself. Don't forget to click all the buttons you're supposed to make this video viable to the ever-changing whims of the YouTube algorithm. Keep it loud, and stay safe. Feels like I'm holding nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all.